Okay, so the Nintendo Switch has a huge library of amazing first-party games. Now, a fair few of these games are ports, and real quick, for those of you that don't know what ports are, they're essentially games that were once made for an older system that are later re-released. Over the nearly 4 years of the Switch's life, there have been quite a few first-party games that have been brand new. However, a handful of them have been ports. Because of the amount of ports the Switch has received, some people call the Switch the port machine. And so in this video, I'm going to be talking about everything to do with the Switch being considered a port machine. And real quick, I just want to say that I'm not going to be counting ports that aren't first-party games. And so don't come at me in the comments when I don't talk about a random port of a random game that's over 20 years old, as I personally don't think ports of third-party games are a problem at all, and think that ports only become a problem when Nintendo release a large amount of them at full price. And with all that said, let's start the video. Alright, so to start the video off, we've got to go back to March of 2017. The Switch just released alongside 2 brand new first-party games, with those being Breath of the Wild and 1-2 Switch. Following the release of those 2 games, 8 more first-party games were released in 2017. Only 2 first-party games that were released on the Switch in 2017 were ports, with those games being Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Pokken Tournament DX. So after 2017, it's safe to say the Switch wasn't really looking like a port machine. However, in 2018, there were 14 first-party games that were released for the Switch, counting each individual Labo set as their own games and counting Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu as one game. Now, you're probably asking, well, how many of these were ports? And 5 of them were ports, not including Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu. So if we do some very advanced mathematics, 36% of first-party games that were released for the Switch in 2018 were ports, which pissed some people off. 2019 was quite the year for the Switch, as 13 first-party games were released, with that number counting Sword and Shield as one game. Of these games, there was only one singular port, with that being New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and holy fuck, that's a long name. But anyways, at this point in the Switch's life, I think it's fair to say the Switch was more than a port machine, as there were just so many great games on the system that were not ports. Last year was definitely not the best year for the Switch, as the system saw 14 new first-party releases, with 6 of those being ports. And 2021 only just started, so we've only gotten 3D World so far, which was a port, but there are 4 more confirmed games that are releasing in the first half of the year, and of those games, 2 of them are ports, and one of them is a Mario Golf game, and I fucking hate Mario Golf, the gameplay is always so boring. So by just looking at the numbers, it's really up to you as to whether or not you think the Switch is a port machine. But before you head to Twitter to cry about there being too many ports, just remember some of the amazing first-party games on the Switch that are not ports. Now that I've spoken about the numbers, it's time for me to talk about whether or not I think ports are good or bad. And don't get mad, but I don't really think it's all that bad if Nintendo do take some of their older titles and port them to the Switch. Ports are obviously great for Nintendo from a business standpoint, as they release these older games for full price, meaning that they take very little time to develop, and these ported games still generate a fuck ton of money for Nintendo. But more importantly, what's in it for us as the fans when Nintendo release a port? Now, what I say over the next 2 minutes or so will probably piss a few people off, so just letting you know. But personally, I don't think they're entirely bad, as most first-party games that are ported to the Switch are usually either really old, or they didn't sell well on their original console. And so to most people, these ports are brand new games. Let's use literally any Wii U game that's been ported to the Switch as an example. Obviously, the Wii U selling only 12 million systems meant that barely any people actually played the exclusive first-party games that are on the Wii U. Because people didn't end up buying these games, they're all brought over to the Switch, and for people that didn't own a Wii U, which is most people, I really can't see how it's bad for them, as these games are entirely new to them. Then on the other hand, for people such as myself that did own a Wii U, it really sucks to see all these games that I already own being brought to the Switch with little to no changes, instead of seeing entirely new games. I think what's even more annoying is the fact that we should be getting an entirely new game, but instead Nintendo are being plain lazy and just port a game over to the Switch and slap a HD or Deluxe in the title of the ported game. Seeing as this video is all about ports, I feel as though I have to touch on my thoughts towards HD remakes. And I think they're fine, as long as there is a clear and distinct graphical difference between the original version of the game and the ported version of the game. Let's look at Link's Awakening for example. The Switch version of the game looks great, and when compared to Link's Awakening on the Game Boy Color, they look like 2 completely different games, and so this is what a good HD remake looks like. Then on the other hand, the Switch has a few awful HD remakes that I don't think can even count as HD remakes, as they look nearly identical to the original games. Super Mario 3D All-Stars is probably the game that comes to most people's heads when the words bad port or bad HD remake are said, and for good reason as well. There's just so much wrong with this port that I honestly couldn't be bothered to talk about everything that's bad about them. However, I am going to talk about how the graphical difference between the games in the 3D All-Stars collection is not even noticeable when compared to the original games. Like, Nintendo didn't even bother changing the fucking aspect ratio of Super Mario 64, and so the game is still in a fucking box, and Super Mario Sunshine and Galaxy look identical to their original versions on the GameCube and Wii. And so, Super Mario 3D All-Stars is the perfect example of not only an awful HD remake, but an awful port as well. So to summarize the video, I think ports are fine, as long as we don't get too many of them, and that the ports that are labeled as HD remake should actually look different to the original version of the game. And with all that said, it's the end of the video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more Nintendo content, and yeah, it's the end of the video. Thanks for watching.